Morning, everyone. Ray 5 Farm back here again. Kind of let you look behind me here, see what we're going to talk about this morning. Do a video that, everybody wants to do videos on their farm and show you how everything looks good, everything works perfect, hardly anything goes wrong, it's just hunky dory on the farm. Well, let me show you something this morning. As I walk through here, you can see here, we do an early plant of tomatoes every year, and we do between 2,000 to 3,000. We put them in around April the 20th. 21st, somewhere around in there, which was good this year, I guess. The weather looked good. Nothing looked too awful. About a week after we put them in, March, well, let's say it's May, actually. May the 1st, that week of May, we had 100-degree heat for 6 days. Heat indexes was 101, 102. And this is on brand new little transplanted tomatoes that weren't 6 inches tall. So that put a hurt on them, put a big hurt on them. And to make things worse, the very next week after that, we were high in the low to mid 70s and lows of around 50. Here on the farm with our weather station, it was showing 49 and 50 degrees for almost a week straight after being 100 degrees for a week. So what we've got, tomatoes are the trash collectors of the garden. If they get stressed in any way, whether it's a drought stress, whether it's an overwater stress, it could be a temperature stress, pest stress. If they get stressed, they're the trash collector of the garden. They pick up every fungus and every disease in the garden. And there's nothing you can do to fix it. I mean, you can try, you can spray, but with the temperatures we had early this year, the extreme heat a week after transplant, then the extreme cold, for this time of the year, then the water we had come in. What we've got is about 3,000 tomato plants, somewhere 2,500, 3,000, somewhere. I mean, I've done lost count because I've done pulled some up. But we're pulling up everything. We should be picking 500 pounds of tomatoes every 2 days, and we're lucky if we're picking 50 a week. And it's just fungus, extreme heat, extreme cold, whether it be a blight, whether it be a fungus. It just, it stressed them to the point this year to where they're not making. And there's nothing I can do to fix it. We've got good ground, good fertilization, good lime. And I mean, they look like trash. They're falling apart, no low coverage. And I've pulled up a bunch and they have hardly no root ball. And a lot of times when you transplant tomatoes, it can go two ways. Either your transplants are too big and root bound, and then that little root bound root's all the tomato's going to get, so it will cut production in half. Or you can stress the transplant at planting, and because of stress, it never recovers enough to build a good strong root ball, which in turn opens it up for every disease or every fungus that the garden could throw at it, and tomatoes catch it. So I know we normally sell cold tomatoes, box tomatoes this time of the year. I mean, last year we had truckloads of boxes of tomatoes, but this year we're not going to have anything early. I mean, we've got some tomatoes. I've got some down in the middle of the garden because we planted. Right now we've got 4 different stages of tomatoes in, 4 different ages, and it's the early stage that's catching it. I mean, because we went in 3 weeks after the first planting, and by then the weather had kind of leveled out. No extreme heat swings, no extreme cold swings. So, we're about 3 weeks out before we really start producing decent tomatoes. And then we've got some younger than that. And we've got our fall tomatoes like we had last year. We were still selling, vine ripe tomatoes the 1st of November. And I've got 12 or 1,300 of them that will be transplanted in the garden in about 2 weeks. So, I mean, we will have tomatoes through the season, into the late season, early fall. It's just these early tomatoes that we normally have that everybody's accustomed to, we're just not going to have. And, we're going to do everything we can, to keep going. I mean, we're just constantly replanting and going, but sometimes you run into something like this. No one likes to talk about it. No one wants to show these ugly videos of these ugly tomatoes. They're falling apart, no cover. They look awful. I remember somebody saying a little while ago that it didn't take a lot of gray matter to be a farmer. You just put a hole in the ground and stuck a seed in it and it just grew. Well, I guess I need somebody with more gray matter than I got, because, every year it's something. Every year you run up against something that you have to learn that you've never run into growing. You know, with the size of garden we grow, I mean, it's every single year you run into something that you've never seen, never heard of, and you ask everybody in the county, everybody in the state, everybody on the internet, you know, that actually grow, you know, commercial farmers trying to find out what's going on. Sometimes you get answers, sometimes you don't. And the answers I've gotten on my tomatoes are pretty much what I figured. They just got stressed from the get-go. And once they get that extreme heat from transplant and then that extreme cold the very next week, I mean, back to back, you're going from 102 degree heat index to 50 degrees at night. Tomatoes they just can't handle it. So when that happened, you know, they got stressed, never developed a root ball, and then opened themselves up for every disease in the garden, and that's what they got. So today's Monday. We are in the process of pulling up every single early season tomato plant, all the plastic, all the drip tape, and going again, replanting something on this top side of the garden. You figure, you know, it's a lot of tomatoes. You figure 10, 15 pounds a plant, 2,500 plants. It's a lot of tomatoes, a lot of loss. You know, tomatoes aren't cheap. Everybody likes them. They're extremely hard to grow. And when you lose this much of them, you know, it puts a dent in the pocketbook of the farm. But, I mean, plastic's twice what it was last year. Drip tape, fertilizer, seed, you know, it's all gone. It's wiped out. Huge loss. I mean, a massive loss for the farm this year. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a late season. Well, you know, I saw it coming, you know, 3 weeks ago or so. I saw the tomatoes, and, you know, we've been trying to save, trying to spray, fertilize, just nothing's worked. So I started a bunch of watermelons for a late season watermelon crop that should come off around the second week of September. So what we're going to do is pull everything in the top part of the garden here, and we're going back in with a set of watermelons. You know, we've got watermelons in the back now. Y'all seen the videos. They'll be ready hopefully by the 4th of July. And then, you know, a couple stages younger than that, and the cantaloupes. But what we're going to do is just pull all this stuff up in the front and go back in with watermelons. That way we'll, you know, try to make something off the fertilizer we've already got in the ground. You know, we've lost the plastic, the drip tape, of course. You know, all the stakes. You see all the stakes in the ground. I mean, there's 1,500 of them things drove in the ground, and that is a chore by itself. That, you know, it's done nothing this year. We're just going to have to pull them right back up here in a minute. But make the ugly video for everyone to see. You know, it's not all fun. It's not great. Nothing ever goes right in a farm. But I wanted y'all to understand why we're not having the tomatoes this year that we normally have. And this is it. I hope y'all stick with us. Like I said, you know, we will have tomatoes later on in the season, and we will have fall tomatoes. But just these early spring tomatoes just aren't doing anything. You know, we're pulling them and starting over, and y'all bear with us. And, you know, we've got other vegetables, of course, that are doing great. You know, just keep supporting us, and we'll see where we go from there. Y'all have a good one.